I'm not gonna lie, things are about to get weird. Alright everybody, imagine you're watching a football game and a guy returns the kickoff and he's running, he's on the 50, the 40, the 30, the 10, you're like, he's gonna make it, and then he just steps out of bounds for no apparent reason. That's basically the story of this motion picture, but we'll get into that. We are talking about 1981's Madhouse. But before we dig into this gem anymore, before we look into this any further, once and again, and as always, to the trailer.
Help me get out of here. We can start over. Just the two of us.
Our party is just beginning. You can't leave yet.
You're not still afraid of her after all these years? The stories you used to tell.
They were not stories.
And you're frightened? What of?
On her birthday, she had this special ceremony.
Soon it will be our birthday again. Remember how we used to celebrate, sister dear?
No.
Remember what I did? How it hurt? I will make it hurt again. I'll make you suffer what I've suffered here. Run! You'll never get away from me.
Julia, what is it?
I told you I shouldn't come. I told you.
Now, what is it? What's happened? She tried to do what? What are you talking about?
I know there was a dog in my apartment last night.
Are you sure it wasn't a nightmare? Now, you know how you used to have them, those dreams about dogs attacking you, the way you'd wake up screaming.
Sweetheart, the idea that your sister would sig her dog on your friends is a little bit off the wall.
They keep acting like I'm seeing things, like I'm making it all up, like I'm crazy.
Look, honey.
Do you think I'm crazy, Helen?
There's a light on in the ruin.
Must have been Kimura. Thanks, I'll get it.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.
I'll call you tomorrow.
Okay.
You want your little kitty? Here he is!
Dog. Good boy.
Alright, this motion picture was directed by Ovidio, Assonitis, I can never pronounce his name. Do you really give a shit? Apparently not. More of a producer than anything, but he directed a few things. He did Tentacles, he did Stiegler and Stiegler, he did Beyond the Door. He was uncredited as director on Iron Warrior and Piranha 2, The Spawning. But again, he's more into producing than directing, but he directed this, and for what it's worth, there you go. Okay, playing Julia, Patricia, Mickey. Or should I say Patricia Everly? We'll get there. She's mostly a TV person, so let's run the numbers. She was on stuff like Fantasy Island and Emergency and Mistress and Simon, and Young and the Restless and Empty Nest and The Sixth Sense, the TV show that is, not the motion picture, is what it was. And she was married to Phil Everly of the Everly Brothers. Oh, I kid you not. Father James, Dennis Robertson. Actually had a big TV career. You recognize his face. He's not a star or anything, but let's run this down. He was on stuff like Combat, and Mr. Roberts, and Tammy, and Sanford and Son, and the FBI, and MASH, and Columbo, and Cannon, and General Hospital, and Policewoman, Black Sheep Squadron, the Rockford Files, Vegas, Quincy, you name it, he was there. He's got one of those faces you see me like, I've seen that dude before, I just don't know where. It's because he was everywhere. Speaking of another actor who was kind of everywhere, playing Sam, Michael Macrae. Again, TV actor on everything. Let's run the numbers. He was on stuff like Knight Rider and Dukes of Hazzard and Dallas and Street Hawk and Chips and Alice and Riptide and The Family Guy and Magnum P.I. and MacGyver and Renegade. So again, another one of those human beings where you're like, I know that face. I don't know who this dude is, but I know the face. Playing Helen, Morgan Hart. Or should I say, Morgan Hart most. We'll get there. Mostly TV, small career, just like Patricia Mickey. Let's do it. She was on Happy Days. She was on Vegas and Dallas and The Incredible Hulk and Matt Houston and Simon and Good Time Girls and The Misadventures of Sheriff Lobo, if anybody remembers that. And for the last I don't know how many decades, she has also been Mrs. Donnie Most, who played, Ralph Malph on Happy Days. So it's funny, the two girls in this movie went on to marry these famous, semi-famous, whatever. It is what it is. Let's keep going. And we got Jerry Fujikawa as Mr. Kimura. I'm just throwing this one in for shits and giggles. He was on stuff like MASH. He was on stuff like The Twilight Zone and The Wackiest Ship in the Army and The Wild West and I Spy and Green Acres and Cannon and Kung Fu and Taxi and The Waltons. And he popped up in some movies too, Chinatown and Eat My Dust. So, again, you might recognize his name. I doubt it. You might recognize his face. It's possible, but he was out and about. All right, everybody, we're going to do this in 90 seconds or less, so we can keep it short, keep it fast, keep it entertaining, keep it moving, and we can get to that place where we break this puppy down, the summation. The movie starts out, it's kind of like in a dream sequence. You see this image of these two girls in a dark, whatever, backdrop, and the one girl smashes the other girl's face. It is what it is, whatever, you don't know. The movie kicks off. You find yourself in a school for the deaf, where this incredibly hot school teacher is actually hanging out and talking to her incredibly hot school teacher friend, and she gets rolling about, birthdays and stuff like that. Is what it is. Well, before you know it, she gets a phone call from her uncle, who is a priest, and he says, hey, you know what? You should come and meet up with your sister. When she gets there, she sees that her uncle is waiting for her. And she gets the lowdown that her sister has got some kind of a terminal disease that's eating up her face and making her mutated and all that. But she doesn't really want to meet her sister because her sister is evil, demonic, and very cruel to her. And nobody ever believes the stories she would tell. But she agrees to meet with the sister, and she does what she does. She goes in, and come to find out, the sister is still crazy, psychotic, mean, and cruel. She runs out the room. The uncle's like, oh, poor baby, I don't know if I believe you, but it is what it is. Catch you later. She's so traumatized by this, she goes to her boyfriend, who apparently is a psychiatrist or some shit like that, and she confesses, oh my God, I got this sister. She's evil. He's like, you got a sister? Yeah, she's my twin. What? You got a twin? Yeah. She tells him all this kind of shit. He never seen it coming. He's a little bit taken back, a little bit shocked, but she tells him about the horrible things that this girl would do to her when she was a child growing up. So it's kind of evil, kind of sick, actually, but it is what it is. He digests it. Before you know it, the movie is rolling. Anyway, you jump ahead and you find and you see the sister is escaping from the mental ward or the hospital, whatever the hell that place is that they're keeping her. And she has this help from a dog in a black station wagon. Ooh, scary stuff. Ooh, next thing you know, you see the good sister, Julia. And she's teaching class with the deaf kids, as it is. And they tell her, your sister has escaped. Holy shit. Anyway, next thing you know, her boyfriend has to leave town to go to some conference in San Francisco. So she takes her little deaf student, and they go off to church and introduces him to the uncle. Is what it is, stuff like that. Before you know it, though, the maintenance man, he's killed. Whoa. And yes, the one and only Mary, the evil sister, now starts to live in the apartment, which is vacant, upstairs from her sister as she's gazing down and watching everything her sister is doing. Next thing you know, her favorite little student, the little deaf boy, he's out, he's playing in the park, and he's throwing a frisbee, where he's met by a big giant Rottweiler. The big giant Rottweiler that helped Mary escape from the sanitarium. which killed a security guard. And guess what he does? You're like, no, they're not going to kill the little kid. They're not going to kill the kid. Yes, they killed the little fucking kid. I was shocked myself. But that's the way it goes. Before you know it, they have to inform Julia, yep, that little kid is dead. Sick shit is what it is. Well, the boyfriend still has to leave town in the midst of all this craziness, so he decides he's taking off, and he goes to her other school teacher friend, Helen, and says, hey, can you keep an eye on Julia while I'm gone? She's like, yeah, ain't no thing, whatever. So she goes over there for some reason the night before he leaves, but, we'll get there. Anyway, so she goes over there, and while Julia's asleep, she's killed. Nobody really reacts to this. She just disappears, and when she wakes up in the morning, Julia that is, Helen's gone. Whatever. The boyfriend stops by. They're talking. They're like, oh, well, she must have left. Is what it is. I'll see you later. I gotta go. I'm gonna go off to my conference after I get freshened up. Meanwhile, Julia takes off to go back to school. Is what it is. And what does she do? She winds up running in to her uncle, who says, I got a birthday planned for you. I have a birthday party just waiting for you. But we already know by that point that the uncle is a psychopath because he took the landlady and, well, he chopped her up into little pieces in the apartment when he was setting up the party that he was going to take Julia to. Pretty strange, pretty weird, pretty sick is what it is. So, you see the uncle, he takes Julia to the birthday party where there's a bunch of dead people around a table, and he introduces her once again to her sister Mary, who laughing and shrieking and making all kinds of noise. But, and here's the cliffhanger, her boyfriend loses his speech on the way to the airport, which is, he had to give a speech in San Francisco. Nobody gives a shit, is what it is. And he has to return to the house. Is he going to get there and save her? Is he going to save her life from the evil uncle, the crazy sister, and this giant Rottweiler from hell? Who knows? Who cares? It doesn't really make a difference. Let's just get going to the summation. All right, everybody. Does Madhouse work? Not really, but I'm not saying I'm not recommending it. We'll get to the reasons why. All right, before we do anything, let's get the big three out of the way. The directing, this is the saving grace of this motion picture. It actually looks great. It really does. It's shot very well. The cinematography is beautiful. The lighting on it is stunning. It looks cool. There's some really funky, weird camera angles thrown in there to give it a little bit more of an odd feeling and to make you uncomfortable. But the look of the movie is actually its biggest saving grace. So, as far as that goes, the directing, fine. The writing, alright. Sometimes it's pedestrian. Sometimes it just gets you from point A to point B. And those scenes are fairly okay. But then there's other scenes where the writing is just like, did they really just have the actress say that? I mean, there's one point where the Julia character actually sits there and goes, she was the mistress, and I was her slave. And I'm like, did they just fucking say that? Did they really? Nobody went to the writer and said, I'm not saying that. That is the most ridiculous shit. The director, it didn't hit him where he would have said, dude, you take your pages back and come up with some other shit. That is partially some of the corniest fucking writing I've ever seen in my life. The most melodramatic, stupid shit. This is a slasher flick. What the fuck are you doing? Apparently nobody did, because lines like that are in the motion picture, and there's other hokey parts too, where like she's in the car with her boyfriend and they're joking back and forth and making out in the midst of all this stuff, which bothers people and then doesn't from one minute to the next. And you're just like, this is laying it on kind of thick. This is a bit silly, but it is what it is. It's a low budget slasher flick, so I guess the writing is passable. The acting, there's parts of it that are all right. I mean, there's parts of it that are decent, but the actors only had so much to work with. Patricia Mickey can go from being overly melodramatic to being a little bit flat, but she's gorgeous, so you just roll with it and you just overlook it. Macrae, he's all right as the boyfriend. Dennis Robertson actually plays the sick, twisted uncle priest, whatever the fuck he is, really well. He's over the top. He's zany. He's completely in love with being evil and lays it on massively thick, which is going to kind of hurt the movie a little bit, but at least he's delivering. So the acting, yeah, it's up and down. It is what it is, but you'll roll with it. All right, everybody, let's break this thing down a little bit more. Now, there's a lot more negatives to talk about than positives, to be brutally honest. But like I said, we're going to cover the positives first. First off, the movie is pretty to look at. As I said earlier in the directing part, it looks good. It's shot well. Stylistically, it feels nice, and the lighting is just immaculate on it. So it almost has a strange dream-like quality all the way through it. So for that, you kind of like enjoy the look of it. You also enjoy the pacing, at least for the beginning, because it has one of those movies that builds an atmosphere and a vibe. Is it always logical? No. Is it always sensical? Far from it. But it does build a vibe, and it does build an atmosphere. So it does have those two things going. Where the motion picture completely falls apart is the third act. Let's face it, folks. As soon as this turns into the uncle being evil, this movie gets dumber than a pile of shit. It really does. It goes from being like, okay, there's some flaws here. I see some things. But I'm rolling with this. You know what I mean? You get caught into this and you're into that vibe of like, you know what? I can roll. This reminds me of something like, you know, The Sentinel. Or this reminds me, or it gives me the visual views of something like Amityville Horror. I'm kind of rolling, even though there's some flaws. But come the third act, you're just like, what did we turn into? They just brought in a different motion picture and dropped it in this motion picture. We went from being in The Sentinel or the Amityville Horror or something of the like, and then we just got thrown into the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And it becomes a whole bunch of, and you got this priest uncle dancing around, singing songs, killing people left and right. He did a character shift that was just ridiculous. Yes, they might have hinted to a little bit earlier. This guy was fucking creepy. But to make such a hard right turn from the vibe and the feel and the style of this motion picture and turn it into what it became, it's like such a stylistic leap. You're like, what? How do we go from here to there? How do we get the vibe of this to this? We went from something that's basically stylized to something that's just gore, and something that's mood and atmosphere to something that's just singing and crazy over the top, goofy, you know, fucking Rob Zombie shit. How do we make that leap? And it never settles with you. It never feels right. And there's parts of it, I swear to God, after the uncle goes apeshit nuts or whatever, or reveals he's apeshit nuts, you start saying to yourself, this is fucking funny. It's comedic almost. I mean, there's parts of it you're just going to start laughing. You're just like, this is so over the top. Where do we go from here? And for the love of God, if there's one actor I feel bad for in this motion picture, it's the goddamn dog. It really is. That big Rottweiler, you know what I mean? I feel bad for him. They were sticking something in his mouth. I could see it to make him look like he was growling. Grrr. The dog is just sitting there dumb and happy. He's not pissed off at anything. And they would put this appliance in his fucking face to pull his face up, to make it look like he didn't look like he was growling. He looked like he was having an emotional breakdown. But they would put this thing in his face to do something, to make him look angry. And you're like, this poor fucking dog. He doesn't need this. I don't get it. And let's just pick out the scenes with the dog in the motion picture. We're going to overlook for a fact that, is this the same dog that was supposed to be torturing the sister 25? You know, they're turning 25. Is this the same dog that was torturing the girl that somehow Mary had secret powers over, and the dog would do whatever she wanted by a wave of her hand? Yeah, that's all in there, whatever. Is this the same dog? Because it's the oldest fucking Rottweiler on planet Earth. I had a Rottweiler. Love the guy. It's my boy. They make it 10 years. That party's over. So clearly, is this the same dog? I don't know. But they're acting like it's the same dog. And the scenes with him are ridiculous because sometimes it's him and sometimes it's a puppet dog. Sometimes it's him and sometimes it's a big stuffed one being thrown on somebody's chest with blood flying everywhere. And for the love of God, the scene where the dog sticks his head in the door near the end of the motion picture and the boyfriend kills him with a power drill, the puppet they used, I broke up laughing. I broke up laughing. It was so bad looking and so not real looking. And when he starts killing it, you're going from this movie that was building you into this stylized thing where you're kind of like, I'm into this, to fucking laughing. And you're just like, I've never seen people throw down the fucking ball that close to the end zone and just say, I'm not crossing the line. Nope. Not doing it. Nope. And while we're talking about the boyfriend, let's add in the whole plot where he had to go back to the apartment and kind of semi-rescue her, or whatever you want to call it. He's in a fucking taxi cab, And all of a sudden the car gets a flat tire and he sets his important speech down on the top and it blows away into the mud. There's like 75 pages to this fucking thing. And he's like, well, you have to take me back to the apartment so I can get my copy. It's on loose leaf fucking paper. This is before printers. So, what do you do? Write this fucking book twice? I mean, the movie is loaded with stupid, goofy shit like that. It really, truly is. So, whatever. You get where I'm going. In the end, what the hell is Madhouse? It's a movie that because of the visual success, because of the visual stylization, in the first 40 minutes or 50 minutes of this thing, that actually tries to build some kind of a vibe, you might forget, especially if you haven't seen it for a billion years like I have, just how goddamn bad the third act of it is. You might just not remember how awkward and shitty the last chunk of this motion picture truly was. This is style over substance. This is look, and this is frosting. Where the cake, the birthday cake, underneath it is just made like shit. Let's be honest. You know what I mean? It's like it looks good until you cut it apart and you realize it's undercooked, it was poorly made, and everything that it could have been somehow wound up on the kitchen fucking floor in a jumble. It just didn't reach the goal line. All right, be good. Take care. Stay out of trouble. Be kind to a stranger. Be there for your friends. But most of all, never, and oh do I mean ever, take any bullshit from anybody. See y'all soon.